Okay, this will be the review for test number 3. It covers 1.4 and then the material in chapter 5 that we've done. So you'll need to make sure that you go back to your notes and you find all the information that you need from your notes and use your notes and this test review. So you need to make sure that you go through the review and then check it with the video. So on the question number 1, it's asking you to simplify the expression. So basically we're going to use regular rules with exponents. Any numbers just need to be multiplied out, and when you multiply with variables, you simply add the exponents. So negative 10 times negative 2 is going to be a positive 20. Count up your y's. You have 2 y's here and 4 more here, so when you add all those together, that would be 6 factors of y that would have to be written. And 4 z's with 7 more z's would make that be 11 factors of z, so that would be your final answer. And here, when we're using this one, this is a power of a power, so there's powers inside and powers outside. The rule on this one means that you would simply multiply the powers by the 2. Down here on the z, it would be a z to the first. So the 2 on the outside is going to, everything inside has to get that power of 2. So we're going to multiply the powers when we have a power outside and a power inside. So this would be x to the 20th. 2 times 3 is going to be y to the 6th. And then on the bottom you have a z to the first, so 1 times 2 would be z squared. That would be your simplified answer. And the next section here is just adding and subtracting with polynomials, and this is starting in chapter 5. So the only thing that you have to remember here on this is that you're going to distribute this negative sign before you do anything. So when you distribute the negative sign, it's going to change all those signs. This would then become positive a squared, this would become positive a, and this would become negative 3. So now just go back and combine like terms. So let's see, I only have, this is the only cube value, so I'm just going to keep it as 9a cubed. Then I'm going to look at my a squared, so I have a negative 2a squared and a positive 1a squared, so that'll be negative a squared. Then I'm going to go look for all my a's, so this would be a negative 6 and a positive 5 and a positive 1. So 5 and 1 would make positive 6, and this would make negative 6. So I don't have any a's. No a's in the problem here, so I leave all the a's off. Then I look at the constants. I have 10 plus 6 would be 16, and subtract 3, so that would be plus 13. So when the variables cancel off, then you just don't have that variable in your answer. Okay, on number 5 and number 6, you're using multiplication. So here all I'm doing is just distributing the 8x. So I'm going to multiply times each number in parentheses. That'll be negative 40x cubed. Then I have negative 8 times positive 3. That'll be negative 24. And an x is going to be an x squared. And then negative 8 times negative 6 will be positive 48 with just an x on it. And that would be your final answer. Now here with multiplying binomials, you're always going to use FOIL when you multiply with binomials. So multiply, be real careful with your signs. So my first would be negative 6 times positive 2, which will be negative 12x squared. My outer is going to be negative 6 times negative 5. That'll be plus 30. And I have an x and a y. Then the inner is going to be a 2 times a 1 and an x and a y. So that would be plus 2xy. And the last would be 1 times negative 5, so that'd be negative 5 and y squared. Since the two middle terms are both xy terms, I'm going to combine those, and my final answer will be negative 12x squared plus 32xy minus 5y squared. Oh, I skipped one up here. I didn't see it. I need to go back up here. Okay, so this one is involving negative exponents. So when we work with negative exponents, the answers always can have to be a positive on the exponents. So here I'm going to use the same property I used right there and just multiply. So on this x is a 1. So I'm going to multiply both exponents by -3, and this would turn into y to the 12th. But the bottom would have x to the -3. And since I don't want any negative exponents on my answer, the negative on because this has a negative exponent, it has to switch sides of the fraction. So that just means this x is going to come up to the top and join the y that's there. So I won't have anything in the denominator. I will just have x cubed y to the 12th. So that would be your final answer. Here you have this one, and then we're just going to put a box around that one. Okay, number 7 and 8 says use synthetic division. Alright, now when you use synthetic division and they give it to you in that what you're dividing by is in parentheses, you're always going to use the opposite of that number to go in the outside box. So on the outside box is going to be a +4, and then you're going to have a box, and you're going to, and it depends, sometimes I draw it outside, sometimes inside. So you're going to only use the coefficients. So that would be a 2. So I have an x cubed. Now I go to x squares. That would be -2. Then go to the x to the first, -24. And then the constant would be a 5. So I'm going to bring down the front number always to the front, to underneath the line. And then you just multiply. So 4 times 2 would be 8. Then I have a -2 and a +8. That would be 6. Then 4 times 6 would be +24, so that means that's going to be a 0 right there. But 4 times 0 would be 0. So that means here in my little remainder box, I have a 5 left over. Now when I go back to write my answer, my exponents on the answer have to be 1 less than what I started with. So my answer here is going to be 2x squared because it started with x cubed and I'm dividing off one of the x's. Then I'm going to go to plus 6x. Then I don't have any other number to put here, so I'm not even going to put a 0, but this is my remainder. So I'm going to put plus 5 over my divisor, which was x minus 4. And this would be your final answer. Alright, number 8. I'm going to do the same thing. The opposite here of the 3 would be the -3, so I'm going to have a -3 outside. And now when I look at my powers, I have x cubes, and that would be a 1 on the front of the x cubes. I have x squares, so that would be next with a -6. But there's no x's in the problem, so I have to leave a place, so I have to fill in a 0 for the power that's missing. I'm missing x to the firsts. And then just put your your constant 3 at the back. So this time I'm going to bring down the 1. -3 times 1 would be -3. 6 and 3 would be -9. Multiply, -3 times negative would be a +27. Add the numbers, that'd be 27. 3 times 27 is going to be -81. And so my remainder box will be -81 and a +3, which is -78. So now my answers, the 1 is going to get the x squared because I'm going to go 1 less than what I started with. So I have x squared. Then my next number would be -9x. 27 is going to be my constant. And then my remainder, you can write it with a plus but put the negative on the 78, or you could just put the minus here and put 78 positive. So that would be x plus 3. So you have to have a negative sign somewhere. You can either put the negative sign next to the 78, or you could slide that negative sign down in front of the remainder fraction, but you'd only have to have one. Okay, the rest of these on this page, 9 through 18, even a couple more on the other page, are all using your factoring skills. So 5.4, I have designated these as to what section they're from, but on your test they're going to be all mixed up. So it's not going to be in this order on your test. There, you might have a 5.8 question at the front and a 1.4 question in the middle and something else at the end. So this is where you really need to use your factoring review sheet to help you with your factor choices here. Okay, I'm going to look at this one. It has 4 terms. I know a problem with 4 terms should be my grouping problem. So I'm going to write a little hint right here. This one's got to be grouping. It has 4 terms. So I'm going to look and see, do I have something alike in this one? And do I have something alike here? Can I do them by that? Or do they all have something alike? Looks like they all have something alike. So let's see. It might not be a grouping. It might just be a common factor. So I can divide everything by 6. So I'm going to take out a 6. They all have a's, and the lowest a would be a squared. And the lowest b value is going to be b squared. Okay, so then I'm going to look and see what do I have left. This would leave me with a b. 18 divided by 6 would be -3, and I'm going to have an ab. Then I'm going to take out the 6, and I'm going to have an a. The b squared comes out. And at the back, I'm going to have -2, 4 minus 2, so a squared, and no b's. Okay? And let me see, on this one, this will not factor anymore. This is all we can do with this one. So this one's going to be left like that. If I tried to take a b out of this, I would have 1 minus 3a. If I took an a out of this, I wouldn't have the same factors. So that's all you can do on that one. That one's just a greatest common factor. So that one's not grouping. That's GCF. Okay? All right, over here I have 4 terms and they don't all have a common factor. So this one will be grouping. All right? Grouping. So I'm going to put the first 2 together, and then I'm going to put the back 2 together. So here I'm going to take out an x squared, and then I'll have x plus 4. So now when I go to work with the second set of numbers, I want to make sure that the parentheses in this one also comes out to be x plus 4. So I'm going to take out a +6, be sure that sign's in front of the 6, and then I will get x plus 4. Okay, so now the x plus 4, and I only have 1 in each case, so the only thing I can take out is 1 of the x plus 4s, and then the answers would be the leftovers in the other set of parentheses. So I only have 1 x plus 4 in each case, so I can only take 1 to the front. So this would be your final answer. On number 11, there's 4 terms again. So this one looks like another grouping problem. So I can take out 5 from the first 2, and I can take out 7y from the second 2. And so this one will be another grouping problem. So I'm going to take out my 5 and get x minus 4. So over here, I'm going to be looking for another x minus 4 to show up. Then I'm going to take out a +7 and a y. And that will leave me with a +x and a -4. So now the x minus 4 is the thing they share, so I'm going to bring out 1 x minus 4 because that's the most I can take out of any one of them. And then I'll be left with 5 plus 7y. And that would be your final answer. Okay, the bottom 3 problems are trinomials. And at the top in the instructions it says remember to look for a greatest common factor first, then factor the remaining problem. All problems must be factored completely. Okay, so here there is no greatest common factor, so I'm just going to work with my x's and my y's. Since there's x's in the front, I'm going to put an x in the front of each parentheses. And since there's y's in the back, I'm going to put a y back there. So be careful on your test when you type this stuff in that you put an x in the front, a y in the back. Okay, the number in the middle is a 1. So I need the factors of 110 that subtract to give me a 1. I know the signs are going to be different in order to get the negative on that. So I think that would be 11 and 10. And the 11 is the biggest, and it's going to get the negative, and the 10 gets the positive. And that's your final answer. Because there's no more squares. If there's no more squares, you certainly are not going to be able to factor anymore. Alright, number 13, I see a 4 can divide into each number, so I'm going to go out and take the 4 out, and then look at what's left over. I'll have x squared plus 10x plus 21. Okay, my factors are going to be the same sign. They're both going to be the same, and this says they'll both be plus. So I need the factors of 21 that are going to add up to 10. So that would be x and x, 7 and 3, and I'm going to put a plus and a plus. And there's your final answer. Be sure you bring that 4 down to put on your answer. You shouldn't leave it off. Okay, on the last one here, let's see, can 6 go into all those numbers? So can 6 go into 384? Let me get my calculator here and check that. 384 divided by 6. Yes, it does. It goes evenly. Okay, so I'm going to take a 6 and an x out of each one. Then I have x squared. 96 divided by 6 is going to be 16x, and in the middle then I have plus 64. Okay, this one is actually a perfect square trinomial because you have a 1 on the front, a 64 on the back, so that would mean that I could do perfect square, or I can just do it as a regular trinomial. So I'm going to make 2 sets of parentheses. I have an x and an x, factors of 64 that add up to 16, so that has to be 8 and 8, and the signs are the same and they're both negative. So this would be your final answer for this one. Okay? Alright, so that gets us through 14 of the 20 problems. You can see there's a lot of factoring on this test. We've covered a lot of factoring, and factoring is one of those skills in algebra that you use in just about every phase of algebra. Alright, number 5 there, number 15 is from 5, and this is also a trinomial, and it's a trinomial that doesn't have a common factor. So the 2 is not going to divide off. That means it's going to be a rainbow problem. So I'm going to circle the 2, and I'm going to multiply it to the 15 at the back. Then I'll have x squared minus 7x minus 30. I need the factors of 30 that subtract to give me a 7. Factors of 30 that subtract to give me a 7. 3 and 10, I think. So I'm going to have x minus 10 and x plus 3. That'll give me the negative 7. Okay, I circled the 2, so I have to come back and finish it. Now, since these problems are factors, you can't leave the fractions in them. You can only do that if it's an equal 0. One of these down here, you could do that too. But up here, you can't leave the fractions in the answers. So I'm going to divide this out. This would be x minus 5. 3 halves is already in lowest terms, so I'm going to take the 2 and move it out front, and then I'll get 2x plus 3. So this would be your final answer, and you don't want to leave a fraction in the problem right here. Alright, same thing on this problem. It's another one that you have to do rainbow on. So I'm going to circle the 5 and bring it back to the 2. And then I have x squared, x squared plus 11x plus 10. So now I need 2 sets of parentheses. I've got x and x, factors of 10 that add up to 11. That would be positive 10 and a positive 1. I circled the 5, so I'm going to come back and put the 5 and divide it. Then the first one that was going to divide out to be x plus 2, and the second one's already in lowest terms, so I'm just going to move the 5 and make it 5x plus 1, and there is my factored trinomial. Okay, on number 17, I'm going to look and see, do I have a common factor, because those numbers are awfully big, And if I were just to kind of see, they all have A's, and they can all divide by 7. Can they divide by 21? No, that does not go into 56. So I can take a 7 and an A out. Then I'm going to have 3x squared plus 8x minus 3. Alright, so now I keep that 7a, that's just going to be on my answer. But the 3 doesn't divide off, so I'm going to do a rainbow inside these parentheses. So I'll have x squared plus 8x minus 9. So the factors of 9 that subtract to give me 8, that would be 9 and 1. So I'm going to have x and x, positive 9, because the middle sign's plus and it goes to the big number, and negative on the 1. Now I circled the 3, so I'm going to bring it back underneath. And then I'll have 7a. This would simplify to be x plus 3. And this 3 goes in front of the x to be 3x minus 1. And this would be your final answer. Alright, number 18 is a difference of squares. Okay, difference of squares. It has to be a binomial. Okay, these would be rainbow problems. Okay, this one was a GCF and then a rainbow. You had to do both. Alright, difference of squares. They have to be a binomial. It has to be 2 terms. Then they have to have a minus. That's what difference means, subtraction. The numbers have to be perfect squares. And the variables need to be even. And that should be an even power right there. Make that a squared. It's a typo right there. Okay, so now I need the factors. So 36 can break apart and be 6x and 6x. And 169 is a perfect square for 13. So it'll be 13y and 13y. And you put a plus on one and a minus on the other, and that's it. That's all you have to do. Just make sure that that's an even power. Make that be a 2 on there. Alright, the last 2 problems say solve, and so this time when you solve, you're going to get x equals at the end. You still have to factor, but after you get it factored, you're going to go back and make some small equations so that you can finish it. So I'm going to have, got to be equal to 0, okay? So write a little note here. It must be equal to 0 before you can even start it. So they are, so I'm just going to use my factoring skills. Keep your equal 0 in the problem. So I need an x and an x. Factors of 48 that subtract to give me a 2. So that would have to be 8 and 6. And I need the negative on the 8 and the positive on the 6. And now if I know that I'm multiplying 2 things together and the answer comes out to be 0, one of these sets of parentheses would have to give me a 0. So I say x minus 8 could have made the 0 in the problem, or x plus 6 could have made the 0. Then you go ahead and finish it out, move the 8 over so there'd be positive 8, and over here move the 6 over, it would be negative 6. So your answer on your homework is going to be x equals 8 comma negative 6. Make sure you follow instructions on how it says to write your answers. Okay, the last one, number 20. This is a binomial. It's 2 terms, but it's not squares. Okay, it's a binomial, but 5 is not a square, and x to the first is not going to be a square. So this problem can only be done by greatest common factor. So all I can do is take out an x and then simplify that. I'd be 5x minus 9 equals 0. So x equals 0 will be one answer because my exponent says I've got to have 2 answers. So this tells me I need 2 answers. Okay? Then I'm going to take the 5x minus 9 and make it be equal to 0. Whoops, this should be a 0. okay? Add 9 to both sides, so I get 5x equals 9, and then divide by 5. So the other answer will be at 9/5. So remember, when you're solving a quadratic equation, what you're actually doing is you're trying to find the spots where a parabola would cross the x-axis, okay? So in both cases here, we have two places. This parabola, this quadratic, would cross at +8 and -6. This one would cross at 0 and 9/5, which is a little less than 2. So this would be all the information that you're going to have to do on the test. A lot of places you got to be very, very careful with your signs. You got your answers down here to check them and make sure, just make sure that one little typo that you fix that on your test copy. And you received a copy of this last week. So I wish you the best, and we will go over this on Thursday, so you have this now to work with so that you'll be prepared for your test.